Oh boy, a lot is going on here. It starts by saying, but the pilot's plan. That but introduces some amount of speaker expectation. And it goes on to say, you're safe in my hands, giving the pilot a somewhat God complex. It's as though he's saying that nothing would happen to you because you're in my hands. It's as though he's hinting that he's somewhat of a God. And then it goes on to say the US regulations demand all passengers not disembarking at San Juan to stay on the plane. Now we're quite familiar with the fact that when you are in transit, when you're flying and you're in transit, waiting for another flight to go to your final destination or to another destination, you're free to generally explore the airport. But here we're seeing that they're strict in saying, do not leave the plane. Do not leave the plane. You have to stay on board. And why is that? It is definitely as a result of them being afraid, and you will see it ties into the next line, afraid of the people thinking that, you know what, we want to stay in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico too nice for me to go back home or for me to go where I'm going. So I want to stay in Puerto Rico, little America. And then it goes on to beautifully talk about how the subtle Uncle Sam, and here they're personifying the US and personifying the US government. It is as though they're saying that the US government is a wise and old man who is dressed in red, blue, and white, the colors of the American flag. And he's sarcastically pointing out that too, he's afraid that too many desperate blacks might want to re enslave the island of the free. Now, island of the free. If we check, Puerto Rico is not actually free. Somewhat of they're somewhat a colony of the U.S. So how exactly are they free if they belong to someone else? So that's an example of irony, or might want to say sarcasm, because obviously they intend to embarrass or to insult. We can take irony too. So generally, they go on to say, might jump the barbed wire fence around America's backyard. So obviously, the yard is fenced, or the airport is fenced with electrical, well, of course, barbed wire. That's one thing, as well as electricity running through that wire there as well, to keep out desperate blacks, to keep out people who might want to jump the fence and to go to live in the Puerto Rico. It introduces another phrase, America's backyard. This America's backyard, I don't know much history, to be honest, but this America's backyard was actually first used by the US government, the former US government, Ronald Reagan, who responded to the emergence of anti American regimes in Latin America and the Caribbean in early 1980s. The US government would not tolerate the establishment of governments in America's backyard. That's what Reagan said. He said that we wouldn't tolerate governments in the US backyard. So it was as though they were saying that the Latin America was not allowed to have governments. I wouldn't try to delve on that too much, and you don't have to delve into it too much when you are answering. Just have an understanding of that. There's so much history into this poem, right? Give me your poor. Give me your poor. It simply can tell us that it's as though the San Juan is a sanctuary, a safe haven for persons who are poor, because they can generally come and make something of themselves if they were poor. But it also introduces, and if you know your history again, in on the Statue of Liberty, the inscription, this same inscription, "Give me your poor," is actually written or inscribed, and it tells us that the poor and oppressed persons from Europe, the immigrants from Europe, we're hinting here, but anyway, the immigrants from Europe were welcome. They were welcome to America in the early 20th century. So years 1900, 1920, they were welcome to the Americas, or to the America. And it's interesting because now we treat immigrants so well, they are treating immigrants so cruelly They're treating them as though they are not contributing to their society. But then the Statue of Liberty welcomed them. The Statue of Liberty welcomed persons who are poor, and they established the fact that these people were actually the ones who were working to make America great. But people want to make America great again. Okay, I'll stop there because I'm going off track. What they're saying here, I'll repeat that in basic summary. Previously, in the 20th century, the early 20th century, immigrants were welcomed. They were welcomed under the impression of "give me your poor." These are words that are also inscribed in the Statue of Liberty as a welcome to everyone that can come and contribute to the American society. In fact, it's called a land of the free and the home of the brave. But if it's the land of the free, then why are they colonizing an island like Puerto Rico? You understand what I'm saying? So it might not necessarily be free. And if it's not necessarily free, then they should not basically refer to themselves as the land of the free because they are making it not so free for someone else. We see some ellipses being used here. Ellipses or ellipsis is three dots. So you see those three dots there. Well, those three dots introduce, and it's Greek. It's Greek for to mean that something is left out. You know how we use the apostrophe? Well, the three dots are used in the same sense to mean that something is left out, something we didn't want to say. So, give me your poor. We will selectively take, and I'm telling you, I'm hinting to you what that ellipsis probably means at the end there. Give me your poor, but we'll choose the ones we love. Anyway, it goes on to finish off by saying toughened tinted glass, the contrast tantalize. We are seeing there a beautiful alliteration. This alliteration shows us that two things. One, that they are also adding to the separation, toughened tinted glass. And we can say toughen means strong. They don't trust the people that are coming so much that they have to use heavily tinted glass and also tough glass because they don't trust them. And it says a contrast tantalize. It's as though they're saying that the San Juan is different to all other Caribbean countries. It's contrastingly different. So it's saying that the other countries are poor or appear poor, and San Juan, because of its affiliation with the US, is rich. So they're putting all these measures in place to separate the people of the Caribbean from the San Juan because they don't want these desperate blacks to inhabit little America, little Puerto Rico. Hmm? So, yes, that's there. Then it says U.S. patrol cars glide across the shimmering tarmac. Again, the presence of the police cars, the U.S. Police cars, definitely also add to that protectivity, that protective layer. They want to desperately keep all these people out of the U.S. Containers baggage trucks unload with fierce efficiency. They're moving so fast because if they are stopped there, we want to process their luggage as quickly as possible and get the plane back on the road, well, in the sky. So after there were quick movements of people to ensure the plane was back in the air, they're climbing again. And as they climb and they move low to the ground, the poet, the persona on board, can see the pulsing city streets. And he realized that they're galvanized shanties. What does that mean? It means that they're broken down buildings, they're shacks more or less. And next to those shacks, there are civilized condominiums. He talks about polished Cadillacs. So, polished Cadillacs, and then Rastas with push carts. So what is that telling us? You can see a contrast being created here, as a difference between two things, a difference between two realities. So you have condominiums and we have shanties, we have Cadillacs and Rastas with push carts. So it tells us what? It tells us the as the poet gets closer to the land, he realizes that Puerto Rico, though a colony of the US, is not so significantly different from the other Caribbean countries or the Caribbean territories. So what exactly makes them great? What exactly makes them glittering? They're glittering from above. As you get closer though, they appear somewhat the same. There's rich and there's poor. There's fancy cars and then there are push carts. So it appears as though it's every other Caribbean country, just like, well, San Juan is just like any other Caribbean country, territory, island. So it goes on to say, as we climb San Juan's fool's glitter, and that's explaining there again. Some persons may think it's perfect from afar, but when they get down close, they get to realize that that glittering, that looking good, is really just from afar. Close by, it's not so significant, it's not so great. And it explains it beautifully by the analogy of a fallen TV set. So they're saying that a lorry is carrying a TV, and that TV has fallen to the ground and it has been destroyed, and now you can see inside that TV. Even the TV is giving us a nice image, a nice colorful image when it's working. When that TV has fallen and the back is out, it looks like chaos. It looks like misery at the back there. So it's telling us what? It's hinting to us that when we are afar, we can see good pictures from the screen, but when we are inside something, the picture is different. All right? It's beautiful writing, right? I know. The roads like twisted wires. Of course, similarly, they're comparing the roads to the wires of the fallen TV set. Bright cars, microchips. That's a metaphor. They're comparing that the bright cars that they're talking about, like to the microchips within that fallen TV. So, why exactly is the writer comparing San Juan to a TV? You know, when we're looking at television, we and little children often believe that it's true what they see. But really, if you get to understand movies as well as ads showcasing these other countries, is that much lie go into it. Huh? Many lies go into what they put on TV. So it's as though the writer is trying to hint to us, just like with TV, we don't necessarily see the truth. And when we actually get on board, when we actually come to see for ourselves, the truth is different to what we might want to accept. So we see juxtaposition, we see some juxtapositions there again. They're juxtaposing when we're putting two different things alongside right next to each other. Galvanized shanties versus condominiums, polished Cadillacs versus rastas with push carts, and so on. So it goes on to talk about those, and coming down to the end there, it talks about it's sharp, jagged, and dangerous and belong to someone else. That is interesting. It tells us that they are parting shot at the country. Mm, they're saying generally that the US is the owner the owner of Puerto Rico. And though it appears amazing to us from afar, it is really not so amazing when you get to know it deep down. When you get to walk the streets, you it appears sharp, it appears jagged, and it appears dangerous, just like any other Caribbean territory. And there's nothing significant about Puerto Rico except the fact that it belongs to someone else, and that someone else just happens to be the US, and that is the only thing that makes Puerto Rico special. So, recapping, we can use the themes discrimination, oppression, places, people, we can also say culture, and Americanization to sum up this poem. Here, we can compare this poem to any other within the syllabus using these themes. The mood is generally a sarcastic one, while the tone is bitter with a sarcastic atmosphere. Of course, it's sarcastic. It's sarcastic because America refers to itself as the land of the free, and they're colonizing Puerto Rico. The tone is bitter. The poet obviously wanted to explore Puerto Rico and was prevented from doing so because of these terrible U.S. regulations. Summary: though Puerto Rico appears to be a prosperous, modern country, probably because of its association with the US, and it appears that way from afar, when you get on the streets, it would not be any different when compared to Caribbean countries or other Caribbean nations. And these Caribbean nations, of course, all Caribbean nations have a mixture of wealthy people as well as persons who are not so wealthy. That's all the time we have. I apologize for the lengthy video here. Go ahead and like this though, comment, let me know what you think, subscribe so you can get updates on future postings. Goodbye.